I'm too tired to do this, seriously. But I need to do this. Also, I'm not gonna get my console, but anyways, happy 8th anniversary, Nintendo Switch. Yeah, today marks 8 years of the Nintendo Switch releasing. Huh. It released during Trump's administration, and now the next console will be releasing during Trump's administration again. And with J.D. Vance as vice president, we don't talk about Mike Pence. He betrayed us. So, here's Chapter 4. Chapter 4. I was born in late summer 1984. I think he was born somewhere in August. Just a few months before Papaw cast his first and only vote for a Republican, Ronald Reagan. Winning large blocks of Rust Belt Democrats like Papaw. Reagan went on to the biggest electoral landslide in modern American history. Yeah, I think that's the biggest one. Even bigger than Nixon and George McGovern. I think that's his name. Yeah. Reagan completely destroyed Mondale, just like he completely destroyed Carter and Mondale in 1980, because they knew he put them in a terrible place. I never liked Reagan much, Papaw later told me, but I hated that son of a bitch Mondale. What the hell did Mondale do? And Carter. Reagan's Democratic opponent, a well-educated Northern liberal, stood in stark cultural contrast to my hillbilly Papaw. Mondale never had a chance, and after he departed from the political scene, Papaw never again voted against his beloved Party of the Working Man. So he voted for Michael Dukakis, is that how it's said? And then, I'm not sure if he was alive at that point, whatever. Jackson, Kentucky, would always have my heart. But Middletown, Ohio had most of my time. In many ways, the town where I was born was largely the same as the one my grandparents had migrated to 4 decades earlier. Its population had changed little since the 1950s, when the flood of migrants on the Hillbilly Highway slowed to a dribble. My elementary school was built in the 1930s, before my grandparents left Jackson, and my middle school was first welcomed a class shortly after World War I. Well before my grandparents were born. Armco remained the town's biggest employer. And though troubling signs were on the horizon, Middletown had avoided significant economic problems. We saw ourselves as a really fine community, on par with Shaker Heights or Upper Arlington, explained a decades-long veteran of the public schools, comparing the Middletown of yore to some of the most successful Ohio suburbs. Of course, none of us knew what would happen. Middletown was one of the older incorporated towns in Ohio, built during the 1800s, thanks to its proximity to the Miami River, which empties directly into the Ohio. As kids, we joked that our hometown was so generic that they didn't even bother to give it a real name. It's in the middle of Cincinnati and Dayton, and it's a town. So here we are. It's not alone. A few miles from Middletown, is Centerville. Middletown is generic in other ways. It exemplified the economic expansion of the manufacturing-based Rust Belt town. Socioeconomically, it is largely working class. Racially, there are lots of white and black people, the latter the product of an analogous Great Migration. I think that's how it. Wait, where am I? But few others. And culturally is very conservative. Although cultural conservatism and political conservatism are not always aligned in Middletown. The people I grew up around are not all that dissimilar from the people of Jackson. This is especially obvious at Armco, which employed a plurality of the town's people. Indeed, the work environment once mirrored the Kentucky towns that many of the employees came from. Oh, my neck. Where was I? One author reported that a sign over a doorway between departments read, "Leave Morgan County and enter Wolfe County." Citation 11. Kentucky down to its county rivalries, moved with the Appalachian migrants to town. I'm having trouble seeing this. As a kid, maybe I should turn up the brightness on my computer. Maybe that'll help me a little bit. Yeah, it kind of helped me. As a kid, I sorted Middletown into three basic geographic regions. First, the area surrounding the high school, which opened in 1969, Uncle Jimmy's senior year. Even in 2003, Mama called it the new high school. The rich kids lived here. Large homes mixed comfortably with well-kept parks and office complexes. If your dad was a doctor, he almost had an office here, if not both. I dreamed that I'd own a house in Manchester Manor, a relatively new development not a mile from the high school, where a nice home went for less than a fifth of the price of a decent house in San Francisco. Next, the poor kids, the really poor kids, lived near Armco, where even the nice homes had been converted into multifamily apartment units. I didn't know until recently that this neighborhood was actually two neighborhoods, one inhabited by Middletown's working-class black population, the other by its poorest white population. Middletown's few housing projects stood there. And don't call me racist, okay? And he's not racist either. He's just saying how it is. He's not saying that, he's not saying stupid crap like the Democrats say. They purposely are just saying, oh, it's all the white people's fault and we shouldn't have white people in office whatsoever. Unless it's someone we favor for some stupid reason. Where was I? Middletown's few housing projects stood there. Then there was the area where I lived, mostly single-family homes with abandoned warehouses and factories within walking distance. Looking back, I don't know if the really poor areas and my block were any different, or whether these divisions were the constructs of a mind that didn't want to believe it was really poor. It's like italicized or a different font. Across the street from our house was Miami Park, a single city block with a swing set, a tennis court, a baseball field, and a basketball court. As I grew up, I noticed that the tennis court lines faded with each passing month, and that the city had stopped filling in the cracks or replacing the nets on the basketball courts. I was still young when the tennis court became little more than a cement block littered with grass patches. I learned that our neighborhood had gone downhill, in quotes, after 2 bikes were stolen in the course of the week. For many years, Mama said her children had left their bikes unchained in their yard with no problems. Now her grandkids woke to find thick locks cracked in two by deadbolt cutters. Find thick locks cracked in two by deadbolt cutters. From that point forward, I walked. If Middletown had changed little by the time I was born, the writing was on the wall almost immediately thereafter. It's easy even for residents to miss it because the change has been gradual, more erosion than mudslide, but it's obvious if you know where to look. And a common refrain for those of us who return intermittently is, "Geez, Middletown is not looking good. It's not looking good." Hang on, I'm gonna see how many more pages I got. Oh gosh, I got 10 pages. I'm not that tired right now. This is as high as my voice can go, really. In the 1980s, Middletown had a proud, almost idyllic downtown, a bustling shopping center, restaurants that had operated since before World War II, and a few bars where men like Papa would gather and have a beer, or many, after a hard day at the steel mill. My favorite store was the local Kmart, rest in peace, which was the main attraction in a strip mall, near a branch of Dillman's, a local grocer with 3 or 4 locations. Now the strip mall is mostly bare. Kmart stands empty. Empty, and the Dillman family closed that big store and all the rest too. The last I checked, there was only an Arby's, a discount grocery store, and a Chinese buffet in what was once a Middletown center of commerce. I'm sorry, my shoulder's hurting. I gotta lean back. This crisscross applesauce crack don't help. It's gonna be over 10 till I'm done with this damn chapter. I have a question for you. Who the hell would even vote for Mondale? It was just as stupid as, like, the election of 1968 when they had Hubert Humphrey run. Or even last year when they had Kamala Harris run. Now, Al Gore, I can't say anything about. Personally, I believe that both of the candidates were stupid. We didn't have a good candidate until 2016 with President Trump. Where was I? The scene at the strip mall is hardly uncommon. At that strip mall is hardly uncommon. The few Middletown businesses are doing well, and many have ceased operating altogether. 20 years ago, there were 2 local malls. Now one of those malls is a parking lot, and the other serves as a walking course for the elderly, though it still has a few stores. Kinda like our mall. Today, downtown Middletown is more than a relic of American industrial glory. Abandoned shops with broken windows line the heart of downtown, where Central Avenue and Main Street meet. Richie's pawn shop has long since closed, though a hideous yellow and green sign still marks the site. So far as I know, Richie's isn't far from an old pharmacy that in its heyday had a soda bar and served root beer floats. Across the street is a building that looks like a theater, with one of those giant triangular signs that reads ST blank space L, because the letters in the middle were shattered and never replaced. If you need a payday lender or a cash for gold store, downtown Middletown is the place to be. Not far from the main drag of empty shops and boarded up windows is the Sorg Mansion. The Sorgs, a powerful and wealthy industrial family dating back to the 19th century, operated a large paper mill in Middletown. They donated enough money to put their names on the local opera house and helped build Middletown into a respectable enough city to attract Armco. Their mansion, a gigantic manor home, sits near a formerly proud Middletown country club. Despite its beauty, a Maryland couple recently purchased the mansion for $225,000, or about half of what a decent multi-room apartment sets you back in Washington, D.C. Located... Hello there. Located quite literally on Main Street, the Sorg Mansion is just up the road from a number of opulent homes that housed Middletown's wealthy in their heyday. Most have fallen into disrepair. Those that haven't been subdivided into small apartments for Middletown's poorest residents. Yeah, I think I read that right. A street that was once the pride of Middletown today serves as a meeting spot for druggies and dealers. Main Street is now the place you avoid after dark. What do you mean, OBX? Why you have a question mark? I'm reading Hillbilly Elegy. That's the point of this live stream. Hang on, let me see what that's supposed to mean. I'm scared. No. You must be confusing me with my mom. You don't bring up Outer Banks. Isn't that show with those, treasure hunters or whatever? Those stupid kids that are just more like trouble hunters? Hell no, I don't watch that. I watch Fox News. Where was I? Oh yeah. This change is a symptom of a new economic reality. Rising residential segregation. The number of working class whites in high poverty neighborhoods is growing. Because that show literally makes no sense. It makes 0 sense. In 1970, 25% of white children lived in a neighborhood with poverty rates above 10%. In 2000, that number was 40%. It's almost certainly even higher today. As a 2011 Brookings Institution study found, compared to 2000, residents of extreme poverty neighborhoods in 2005 to 9 were more likely to be white, native-born, high school or college graduates, homeowners, and not receiving public assistance. Citation 12. In other words, bad neighborhoods no longer plague only urban ghettos. The bad neighborhoods have spread to the suburbs. This has occurred for complicated reasons. Federal housing policy has actively encouraged home ownership. From Jimmy Carter's Community Reinvestment Act to George W. Bush's Ownership Society. 2 presidents that are probably stupid. Well, Jimmy Carter definitely was stupid as president. He was a man of faith, but he was a terrible, terrible president. Excuse me? What the hell? Yeah, I'm removing that damn comment. I'm putting you on timeout. Here's a 30-minute timeout. Think before you speak, son. Where was I? But in the middle towns of the world, homeownership comes at a steep social cost. As jobs disappear in a given area, declining home values trap people in certain neighborhoods. Even if you like to move, you can't. Where was I? Because the bottom has fallen out of the market. You now owe more than any buyer is willing to pay. The costs of moving are so high that many people stay put. Of course, the people trapped are usually those with the least money. Those who can afford to leave do so. City lenders have tried in vain to revive Middletown's downtown. You'll find their most infamous effort if you follow. What? Wait, where was I? If you follow Central Avenue to its endpoint on the banks of the Miami River, once a lovely place. For reasons I can't begin to fathom, the city's brain trust decided to turn our beautiful riverfront into Lake Middletown. An infrastructural project that apparently involved shoveling tons of dirt into the river and hoping that something interesting would come of it. It accomplished nothing. Though the river now features a man-made dirt island about the size of a city block, efforts to reinvent downtown Middletown always struck me as futile. People don't leave because our downtown lacked trendy cultural amenities. The trendy cultural amenities left because there weren't enough consumers in Middletown to support them. And why weren't there enough well-paying consumers? Because there weren't enough jobs to employ those consumers. Downtown Middletown struggles were a symptom of everything else happening to Middletown's people, especially the collapsing importance of Armco Kawasaki Steel. AK Steel is the result of a 1989 merger between Armco Steel and Kawasaki, the same Japanese corporation that makes those high-powered motorcycles, crotch rockets we call them as kids. Who the hell came up with this bullcrap? Tell you what, you say another thing like that, I'm putting you on a damn... What? What do you mean bit rate? What? I don't know where these people are getting this. You're not... Well then where are you getting this? Okay? I don't know where the hell people are getting this from. I really don't know where the hell these people got this from. Well, because someone else said that exact same thing. I don't get why the hell they were doing that. I done lost where I was. Oh yeah. Most people still call it Armco for two reasons. The first is that, as Mamaw used to say, Armco built this fucking town. She wasn't lying. Many of the city's best parks and facilities were bought with Armco dollars. Armco's people sat on the boards. My friend texted me and told me to type that in your chat. Oh, Lord. And it employed thousands of Middletownians who, like my grandfather, earned a good wage despite a lack of formal education. Alright. You chose this 24-hour timeout. Make better decisions, children. Oh, Lord. What, you don't like that I'm reading Vice President Vance's book? Well, if you don't want to see it, then don't watch it. Armco earned its reputation through careful design until the 1950s. Writes Chad Berry, in his book Southern Migrants, Northern Exiles. The big four employers of the Miami Valley region, Procter and Gamble in Cincinnati, Champion Paper and Fiber in Hamilton, Armco Steel in Middletown, and National Cash Register in Dayton, had serene labor relations, partly because they hired family and friends of employees who were once migrants themselves. Let me refresh my chat. There. For example, Inland Container in Middletown had 200 Kentuckians on its payroll, 117 of whom were from Wolfe County alone. While labor relations no doubt had declined by the 1980s, much of the goodwill built by Armco had similar companies remained. The other reason most still call it Armco is that Kawasaki was a Japanese company. And in a town full of World War II vets and their families, you'd have thought that General Tojo himself had declined to set up shop in Southwest Ohio when the merger was announced. Yeah, World War II vets. Yeah, they don't want to say anything. They don't want to mention the Japanese after what Tojo did. The opposition was mostly a bunch of noise. Even Papa, who once promised he'd disown his children if they bought a Japanese car, stopped complaining a few days after they announced the merger. The truth is, he told me, that the Japanese are now our friends. If we end up fighting any of those countries, it'd be the goddamned Chinese. Oof. Lord forgive me for that. The Kawasaki merger represented an inconvenient truth. Manufacturing in America was a I think I now realize why they said that. They might have been saying, like, dude, what are the parts in Joe Rogan's podcast with JD Vance? Maybe that's what it is. Hello there. Oh, gosh. Okay, I need my nasal spray. You know what? No, I'll continue reading it. I'll be right back. Gosh. Alright. I think I know why they said that. They probably were mentioning that one part, from, what was it? Joe Rogan's podcast. Is that where you got this information from? Is that where you got it from? Answer my question. Is that where you got it from? Joe Rogan's podcast? You know, Senator Vance, I saw this guy with a miniskirt in New York. I saw this man who was walking around with this miniskirt in New York. Then she got real quiet and said, Senator Vance, I can see his... That. Alright. Hey, I will time you out. I will time you out for 24 hours. Ah ha 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 ha. I don't know where you're getting this from. If that's not where you're getting it from, then you're gonna have to... Okay. This is your decision. This is your decision, son. 24-hour timeout. Oh, so you're apathetic as well? You're apathetic? And I'm not related to you. What are you speaking all that gibberish for? Alright, where was I? I think I was 54. Okay, I think I skipped one part of 52. Alright, 54. Now where was I in here? The Kawasaki, merger represented an inconvenient truth. Manufacturing in America was a tough business in the post-globalization world. If companies like Armco were going to survive, they would have to retool. Okay. Kawasaki gave Armco a chance, and Middletown's flagship company would not have survived without it. Growing up, my friends and I had no clue that the world had changed. Papa had retired only a few years earlier, owned a stock in Armco, and had a lucrative pension. Armco Park remained the nicest, most exclusive recreation spot in town, and access to the private park was a status symbol. It meant that your dad or grandpa was a man with a respected job. It never occurred to me that Armco wouldn't be around forever, funding scholarships, building parks, and throwing free concerts. Still, few of my friends had ambitions to work there. As small children, we had the same dreams that other kids did. We wanted to be astronauts or football players or action heroes. I wanted to be a professional puppy player with her. What? Which was at the time seemed eminently reasonable. By the 6th grade, we wanted to be veterinarians or doctors or preachers or businessmen, but not steel workers. Even at Roosevelt Elementary, where, thanks to Middletown geography, most people's parents lacked a college education. No one wanted to have a blue-collar career and its promise of a respectable middle-class life. We never considered that we'd be lucky to land a job at Armco. We took Armco for granted. Many kids seem to feel that way today. A few years ago, I spoke with Jennifer McGuffey, a Middletown high school teacher who works with at-risk youth. A lot of students just don't understand what's out there, she told me, shaking her head. You have the kids who plan on being basketball players but don't even play on the high school team because the coach is mean to them. Then you have those who aren't doing well in school, and when you try to talk to them about what they're going to do, they talk about AK. Oh, I can get a job at AK. My uncle works there. Um, it's like they can't make the connection between the situation. That is not even a real person. That is not a real person. You can't have the thumbnail of my damn video and tell me that you're real. What the hell? I will hide you from my account, and you will never be seen or heard from again. Good Lord. Where are these ungodly people coming from? Alright. It's like they can't make the connection between the situation in this town and the lack of jobs at AK. My initial reaction was, how could these kids not understand what the world was like? Didn't they notice their town changing before their very eyes? But then I realized, we didn't. So why would they? For my grandparents, Armco was an economic savior. The engine that brought them from the hills of Kentucky, into America's middle class. My father loved the company and knew every make and model of car built from Armco steel. Even after most American car companies transitioned away from steel-bodied cars, Papa would stop at used car dealerships whenever he saw an old Ford or Chevy. Armco made this steel. He'd tell me. It was one of the few times he ever betrayed a sense of genuine pride. My mouth is going dry, that's why. Despite that pride, he had no interest in my working there. Your generation will make its living with their minds, not their hands, he once told me. The only acceptable career at Armco was as an engineer, not as a laborer in the weld shop. A lot of Middletown parents and grandparents must have felt similarly. To them, the American dream required forward momentum. Manual labor was honorable work. But it was their generation's work. We had to do something different. To move up was to move on. That required going to college, and yet there was no sense that failing to achieve higher education would bring shame or any other consequences. The message wasn't explicit. Teachers didn't tell us that we were too stupid or poor to make it. Nevertheless, it was all around us, like the air we breathed. No one in our families had gone to college. Older friends and siblings were perfectly content and to stay in Middletown, regardless of their career prospects. We knew no one at the prestigious out-of-state school. At a prestigious out-of-state school. and everyone knew at least one young adult who was unemployed or didn't have a job at all. In Middletown, 20% of the public high schools entering freshmen won't make it to graduation. Most won't graduate college. Virtually no one will go to college out of state. Students don't expect much from themselves because the people around them don't do very much. Many parents go along with this phenomenon. I don't remember ever being scolded for getting a bad grade until Mama began to take an interest in my grades in high school. When my sister or I struggled in school, I overheard things like, well, maybe she's not at that great at fractions, or JD's more of a numbers kid, so I wouldn't worry about that spelling test. And that is definitely not me. Or is it me? Have you somehow took my damn account? No, you haven't. You are a faker. And you're not even showing up on my live chat thing here. Gosh, where are these bots coming from? Who even creates these stupid sons of bitches? It's not even spelt right. It's definitely a bot since it was made today. Let me see this damn thing here. This one, also made today. This person here, was it made today? Or was this an actual person? That was made 13 years ago. Now this person here is probably real. Maybe not. Well, it's newer, but not. This person here, he's uploaded, but I don't know what the hell he started. I don't know why these bastards are spamming all this bull crap. It's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Now I can't even remember where the hell I was. Aha. There was, and still is, a sense that those who make it are of two varieties. The first are lucky. They come from wealthy families with connections, and their lives were set from the moment they were born. The second is meritocratic. Okay, very well. Since I don't know how the hell I need to say that, I will go to Google Translate. Is that how it's meritocratic? I think that's
meritocratic.
Meritocratic. Okay, I better not have to use Google Translate again. They were born with brains and couldn't fail if they tried, because very few in Middletown fall into the former category. People assume that everyone who makes it is just really smart. To the average Middletownian, hard work doesn't matter as much as raw talent. It's not like parents and teachers never mention hard work, nor do they walk around loudly proclaiming that they expect their children to turn out poorly. These attitudes lurk below the surface. less in what people say than in how they act. One of our neighbors was a lifetime welfare recipient, but in between asking my grandmother to borrow her car or offering a trade food stamps, or offering to trade food stamps for cash at a premium, she'd blather on about the importance of industriousness. So many people abuse the system. It's impossible for the hard-working people to get the help they need, she'd say. This was the construct she built in her head. Most of the beneficiaries of the system were extravagant moochers, but she, despite never having worked in her life, was an obvious exception. People talk about hard work in all the time in places like Middletown. You can walk through the town where 30% of the young men work fewer than 20 hours a week and find not a cycle. The Public Region Institute, a left-leaning think tank, published a report on working-class whites. It found, among other things, that working-class whites worked more hours than college-educated whites. But the idea that the average working-class whites work more hours is demonstrably false. Citation 13. The Public Region Institute based its results on surveys. Essentially, they called around and asked people what they thought. Citation 14. The only thing that report proves is that many folks talk about working more than they actually work. Exactly. Of course, the reasons poor people aren't working as much as others are complicated, and it's too easy to blame the problem on laziness. For many, part-time work is all they have access to, because the Armcos of the world are going out of business and their skill sets don't fit well in the modern... What is going on? What the actual hell is going on? Listen, I have the right to read what I want to read, alright? But whatever the reasons, the rhetoric of hard work conflicts with the reality on the ground. The kids in Middletown absorb that conflict and struggle with it. In this, as in so much else, the Scots-Irish migrants resemble their kin back in the holler. In an HBO documentary about eastern Kentucky hill people, the patriarch of a large Appalachian family introduces himself by drawing strict lines of work acceptable for men and work acceptable for women. While it's obvious that he considers women's work what he considers women's work, it's not all clear what work, if any, is acceptable for him. Apparently not paid employment, since the man has never worked a paying job in his life. Ultimately, the verdict of his own son is damning. Daddy says he's worked in his life. The only thing Daddy's worked is his goddamn ass. Ooh, gosh. Why not be straight about it, Pa? Daddy was an alcoholic. He would stay drunk because he didn't bring food home. Mommy supported her youngins. If it hadn't been for Mommy, uh, we'd have been dead. Citation 15. Please forgive me, Lord. This is just the text of what people have said. Alongside these conflicting norms about the value of blue-collar work existed a massive ignorance about how to achieve white-collar work. We didn't know that all across the country, and even in our hometown, other kids had already started a competition to get ahead in life. During first grade, we played a game every morning. The teacher would announce the number of the day, and we'd go person by person and announce the math equation that produced the number. A math equation that produced the number. So if the number of the day was 4, you could announce 2 plus 2 and claim a prize, usually a small piece of candy. One day the number was 30. The students in front of me went through the easy numbers. 29 plus 1, 28 plus 2, 15 plus 15. I was better at that. Yeah, your 30 minutes may have passed. Now you're going to have to wait 24 hours. You better be lucky I'm not hiding you from my account. Okay? You do that again, I will hide you from my account. I'm not messing around. I was better than that. I was going to blow the teacher away. When my turn came, I proudly announced 50 minus 20. The teacher gushed. I received 2 pieces of candy for my foray into subtraction, a skill we'd learned only days before. A few moments later, while I beamed over my brilliance, another student announced 10 times 3. I had no idea what that even meant. Times? Who was this guy? The teacher was even more impressed, and my competitor triumphantly collected not 2 but 3 pieces of candy. The teacher spoke briefly of multiplication and asked if anyone knew such a thing, if anyone else knew such a thing existed. None of us raised a hand. For my part, I was crushed. I returned home and burst into tears. I was certain my ignorance was rooted in some failure of character. I just felt stupid. It wasn't my fault that until that day I never heard the word multiplication. It wasn't something I learned in school, and my family didn't sit around and work on math problems. But to a little kid who wanted to do well in school, it was a crushing defeat. In my immature brain, I didn't understand the difference between intelligence and knowledge, so I assumed I was an idiot. Yeah, kind of like me. I may not have known multiplication that day, but when I came home and told Papa about my heartbreak, he turned it into triumph. I learned multiplication and division before dinner, and for 2 years after that, my grandfather and I would practice increasingly complex math once a week, with an ice cream reward for a solid performance. I would beat myself up when I didn't understand a concept, and storm off defeated. But after I'd pout for a few minutes, Papa was always ready to go again. Uh, Mom was never much of a math person, but she took me to the public library before I could read. Got me a library card, showed me how to use it, and always made sure I had access to kids' books at home. In other words, despite all the environmental pressures from my neighborhood and community, I received a different message at home. And that just might have saved me. And that's chapter 4. Alright. There. Now I'm gonna figure out if this is some bot problem or whatever the hell this is. Oh no, I'm not finding anything. Yeah, I believe it's just some, it's probably just some, some bot problem or whatever. Or someone's doing it on mobile and adding bots to say that. If not, then I have no idea what the hell that is. Anyways, thank y'all for watching this stream. If y'all did enjoy, please hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to bed now. Good night. And God bless.